If you've ever been a mother, or ever felt forgotten by the very people you raised, please listen. And if this story stirs something in you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Whispers of a Mother. Because silence has gone on long enough. The funeral had just ended. People were still hugging, whispering, avoiding eye contact with grief, when my daughter Karen pulled me aside into a side hallway of the church. Her heels echoed like small hammer strikes on the tile. She didn't hug me, didn't hold my hand. She just leaned in and whispered, as if what she was about to say wasn't meant to be spoken too loud. "Mom, I just wanted to tell you before the lawyer calls, you're not in the will." I didn't understand. I stared at her, certain I'd misheard. "What do you mean?" Her face didn't change. No flicker of hesitation, no sympathy, just cold, calm efficiency. "Dad changed it last year. He left everything to us. Me, Michael, and Rachel. You're not listed." I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. "But I'm his wife," I said, my voice thin and almost embarrassed to speak. "You still are," she replied, her tone flat. "But he wanted to simplify things. He said you'd be okay." "Okay, that's what I had become, a woman who would be okay." I nodded. I don't know why. Maybe because I didn't want to cause a scene? Maybe because mothers are trained to swallow pain before it spills over and embarrasses everyone. At the reception that followed, I smiled like my heart wasn't screaming. I poured tea for guests, accepted their condolences, and listened to people talk about what a great man Thomas was. And he was. At least I thought he was. But now I wasn't sure. When we got home, I sat on the edge of the bed we once shared, and I stared at the small indentation where his head used to rest. How could he leave me out of everything after 51 years? After raising 3 children, 2 miscarriages, 10 hospital stays, 3 cross-country moves. After giving up my job, my dreams, my body, my youth, how could I be nothing? The manila envelope arrived 3 days later. Thick legal papers, a formal letter from the estate attorney. The house transferred to Karen. The retirement account split among the kids. Our joint savings account closed. There was no mention of me except for a flyer tucked into the back. Assisted living options, a guide for senior independence. I sat there holding that envelope, and I swear I could feel something inside me crack. Not a break, not yet. Just a fracture. But the kind that spreads quietly until it splits you in half. Later that evening, Michael sent me a text. "Hey Mom, let us know if you need help downsizing. We found a nice place near Rachel's school." I hadn't even taken off my funeral dress yet. 3 days after the burial, they came to visit. Karen, Michael, and his wife Lindsay. They brought sandwiches from that deli I never liked, and they made small talk like actors reading lines from a play. But it didn't take long before the real reason showed up. "The taxes on this house are going to be a burden," Mom, Michael said, not looking at me. "Maybe a condo would be easier," Lindsay added, sipping her sparkling water. "No stairs, no yard work. More time for yourself." I wanted to scream. What time for myself? I had just lost my husband. My world. And now I was being asked to give up my home too. But I didn't scream. I just nodded and made tea. They smiled satisfied and began talking about logistics, movers, timelines, paperwork. Karen mentioned a meeting with an estate planner just to talk things through. She said it like she was doing me a favor. They didn't come to comfort me. They came to manage me. That night, I sat in the kitchen long after they left. I stared at the photograph still pinned to the fridge, Thomas holding baby Karen, both of them laughing. It was taken in 1973 on a spring morning. I remember like it was yesterday. Back then, I thought love meant never having to question your place. I thought loyalty would be rewarded. But that photograph didn't mean what I thought it did. It was just a moment, a memory, and memories, I was starting to learn, didn't guarantee protection. I stayed up until 2 in the morning rereading the will. Every word felt like another confirmation. You don't matter anymore. But somewhere between page 6 and page 7, something inside me began to harden. Like wet cement starting to set. I wasn't just grieving my husband. I was grieving my own erasure. And I wasn't sure I could survive that kind of silence. But what they didn't know, what they still don't know, is that I kept a copy of the original will. The one Thomas and I wrote together 20 years ago. Before the cancer. Before the confusion. Before the children decided they knew better. And in that version, my name is right where it belongs. Maybe it's not too late to be seen. The next morning, I didn't make coffee. That may sound small to you, but I've made coffee every single morning for 51 years. 1 cup for me, 1 for Thomas, always in the same chipped porcelain mugs we got on our first road trip to Vermont. But now, only 1 mug sat on the counter, and I didn't have the heart to pour it. Instead, I opened the hall closet and pulled down the old accordion file I hadn't touched in years. It was labeled, Important, Original Will. My handwriting, a little neater than usual, probably from back when I still had the energy to make letters look nice. There it was. Dated, signed, notarized. Thomas and I side by side in the lawyer's office 20 years ago. I remembered that day so clearly. We'd argued about the wording of 1 sentence for 20 minutes, not because we disagreed on the substance, but because we wanted it to feel right. Fair, equal. My name was on every page. It wasn't about the money. God knows I didn't marry Thomas for wealth. We built everything together brick by brick, paycheck by paycheck. But this was about being seen, being acknowledged. After a lifetime of sacrifice of putting everyone else first, being erased wasn't just painful, it was humiliating. That evening, I called the lawyer listed on the new will. A young man answered. He sounded sharp, slick, polite but cold. Mrs. Bennett, I'm not at liberty to discuss the contents of the will without authorization from the listed beneficiaries. I'm his wife, I said. Yes, ma'am, but under the most recent version of Mr. Bennett's estate plan, you are not designated as a beneficiary or co-executor. Who is? I'm afraid I can't release that information. I already know, I said quietly. I just wanted to hear you say it. He hesitated, then spoke more gently. I'm sorry, ma'am. I know this must be difficult. No, he didn't. He had no idea. None of them did. That night, I made coffee. Just 1 cup, but I poured it into both mugs anyway. Set them side by side, Thomas's and mine, and I sat there in silence staring at the pair of cups like they were tombstones. The next day, Karen came back. No knock, just her voice calling Mom as she let herself in. I didn't answer right away. I was in the garden, pulling weeds, pretending the earth could take some of my anger if I pushed hard enough. There you are, she said, walking over with her phone still in hand. I've been texting. Did you see the listing I sent you? What listing for the condo? The one near Rachel's school. 2 bedrooms, modern appliances, a balcony, perfect for someone your age. I stood up slowly, wiping dirt from my hands. You've already chosen where I'll live. Karen smiled like she was talking to a child. No, of course not. We just thought it might be easier for everyone. Everyone. That word again. Have you ever thought I asked that maybe I don't want easy? She blinked. What do you mean? I mean, I'm not dead, Karen. I'm not a box to be checked or a piece of furniture to be moved around for your convenience. Mom, no one's saying that. We're just trying to help. No, I said, stepping closer. You're trying to manage me, like I'm a liability. There was a long pause, the kind of silence that weighs heavier than words. Karen shifted her weight, then spoke carefully. Look, we know this is hard, but Dad made those choices. You can't blame us for that. Can't I? Or was it that blaming him would break what little was left of my memory of him, and so it was easier to place that anger somewhere else? I want a copy of the new will, I said. That's not necessary. It is to me. Karen's lips tightened. Okay, I'll have Michael send it. She left without hugging me. No goodbye. Just the quiet thud of the front door closing. Later that afternoon, I called Rachel, my youngest. She lives in Oregon now, teaches yoga. She didn't come to the funeral. Said she couldn't get a flight in time, but I knew better. Mom, she answered, surprised. I need to ask you something, I said. Rachel hesitated. Okay. Did you know I wasn't in the will? Another pause. I thought maybe. Karen said Dad had updated it, but you didn't ask why. She sighed. I figured it was between you and him. I see. There was a long silence. I'm sorry, Mom, she said softly. I really am. I wanted to believe her, but I didn't. Not yet. The will arrived in my inbox at 10:37 a.m. sharp 2 days later. No message, no subject line. Just an attachment, clinical cold, sterile as an X-ray that confirms a diagnosis you already fear. I opened it slowly. My hands were steady, but my stomach wasn't. I scanned the pages line by line, hoping stupidly, desperately for a mention of my name. A footnote, a token acknowledgement, anything. There was nothing. Not even a line that said I was provided for elsewhere. I wasn't forgotten. I was removed. It was deliberate. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in the dark with Thomas's pillow beside me, thinner now than it used to be. I wondered how many times I had defended him over the years, how many times I told the children, your father works so hard, or he's doing his best, or he loves us in his own way. Did he? Or had I just filled in the silence with what I needed to believe? The next morning, I called my old friend Diane. We hadn't spoken in months. Not out of malice, just the way distance creeps in between women who once talked every day and then gradually. Don't. She answered on the second ring. Ellie. I almost cried just hearing her voice. I need a recommendation, I said, skipping the small talk. For what, an attorney? Not a family one, a real one. Diane didn't ask why. She didn't press. She just said, I know someone, quiet, smart, the kind who doesn't make you feel stupid for asking questions. That afternoon, I met with him. His name was Mr. Harper, mid-60s, tidy beard, worn leather briefcase, and the kind of calm that makes you feel steadier just by being near him. I laid it all out. The new will, the original one, the timing, the changes. He listened, eyes narrowing only once when I mentioned Thomas had been on pain medication when the update was filed. Did you witness the signature, he asked. No. Did anyone? I shook my head. Karen handled the paperwork. I was cooking soup. His jaw tightened just a little. Mrs. Bennett, I've seen this before. Children who grow up with privilege often believe they're entitled to everything, including control over their parents. I said nothing, but my silence must have confirmed enough. He leaned forward. The question is, do you want to contest the will? Did I? That word contest it sounded like a game, a match, a courtroom battle. But this wasn't about money. It was about my voice, my worth, my life. Yes, I said, I do. He nodded. Then we'll need to act quickly, quietly if possible. The longer you wait, the more leverage they build. I handed him a copy of the original will, my name right there, in ink, beside Thomas's signature. I wanted to point to it, circle it, scream. See, I existed, but instead, I just passed the page and folded my hands in my lap. When I got home, the house felt different. Not quieter, not sadder, stronger. like the walls had finally decided they were mine again. The morning after I met with Mr. Harper, I did something I hadn't done in years. I opened Thomas's desk drawer. It still smelled like cedar and ink. His handwriting, so careful, so exact, covered dozens of little yellow notepads. Notes about bills, passwords, appointment reminders, grocery lists. In one corner of the drawer, tucked beneath a stack of utility statements, I found something unexpected, a sealed envelope. My name was on it. Just Ellie. No last name. No date. Just my name in his handwriting. I stared at it for a long time. My fingers trembled slightly as I opened it, half afraid of what it might say. Or not say. Inside was a letter. 3 pages, folded with care. He'd written it during the summer before he passed, dated only 2 months before the final will was filed. Ellie. If you're reading this, it means I didn't explain things the way I should have. Or maybe I ran out of time. I let the kids talk me into some changes, Karen especially. They said it was just to make things smoother. I didn't think it mattered. I thought you'd still be protected no matter what. I didn't want to fight. I was tired, and I wanted peace. But if I've hurt you by going along with their plan, I am so sorry. I should have known better. Please believe me, you were always everything. I folded the letter and sat back in the chair. It didn't undo what had happened, but it told the truth. He hadn't erased me. They had. And now, they were going to learn what it meant to underestimate a mother. I started making copies of the original will, the letter, the bank statements, and old emails that showed how deeply I had been involved in everything Thomas and I built. Then, I wrote a list of questions I'd ignored for too long. Why had Karen taken over Thomas's medications toward the end? Why was I not present when the lawyer came to the house? Why did the hospice nurse suddenly stop talking to me? The more I thought, the more the timeline unraveled. Subtle things, quiet exclusions, small cuts that never bled but always bruised. I wasn't just mourning. I had been gaslit. That evening, Michael showed up. No warning, just a knock, then the door opening like this was still his childhood home. "Hey, Mom," he said, casual, almost cheerful. "Just wanted to check in. We've been talking, Karen, Rachel, me, and we think maybe it's time to get serious about the move. The condo offer won't last forever." I didn't invite him to sit. Instead, I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and asked, "Did you know I was taken off the will?" He paused. "Karen said Dad was reevaluating some things. Did you know I wasn't even consulted?" His eyes dropped. I didn't think it was my place. I laughed short and bitter. "But selling my home is your place. It's not like that, Mom. We just want what's best for you." "No, Michael. You want what's easiest for you." There was a long silence. Then he said the most dangerous thing a child can say to a mother who's given everything. "Maybe you're just not thinking clearly right now." I stepped forward. My voice didn't shake. "I'm thinking clearer than I have in years." He opened his mouth to speak, then closed it again. Maybe he finally saw it, that I wasn't going to fold. That I wasn't afraid anymore. "Tell Karen," I said, "that I have legal representation. And tell her I've kept records. Lots of them." Michael paled. "Mom." "Close the door behind you, Michael." And he did. 3 days passed before I heard anything from Karen. Not a call, not a visit, just an email. Subject line: concerns about Mom's well-being. There it was, the narrative shift, the groundwork they were laying. In it, she wrote about my recent behavior, how I'd been uncharacteristically confrontational, and how she was worried I might be overwhelmed and in need of structured support. Structured support. That's what they were calling it now. I sat at my kitchen table, the same one where I had taught them how to tie their shoes and cut their pancakes, and read that email 3 times. Not because I didn't understand it, but because I couldn't believe my own daughter was trying to pathologize my clarity. I forwarded it to Mr. Harper immediately. His reply came 15 minutes later. "We're on track. Don't respond directly. Every word she writes now builds your case." I stared at his message for a long time. Then I got up, took a deep breath, and opened the closet in the guest room. Inside was a collection of boxes, some labeled, some not. They held pieces of my life I'd long forgotten: journals, family photos, canceled checks, postcards from Thomas when he traveled for work. But more importantly, they held proof. There was a file folder with notes from our old financial planner, handwritten with both our names signed. A letter from Thomas to our insurance agent confirming that Eleanor will retain sole control of our home in the event of my death. There were receipts, email printouts, statements with dates and signatures. I didn't realize how much I'd kept. Or maybe I did, and just never thought I'd need to use it against my own children. By the time I finished sorting everything, it was midnight. I'd filled 2 large manila envelopes. I labeled them carefully, "Documents to be opened only if they try to remove me." The next morning, I drove to the bank. I hadn't been inside since Thomas passed. The same teller was there. She looked up and smiled, her expression softening when she recognized me. "Mrs. Bennett," she said, "I'm so sorry for your loss." "Thank you," I replied. "I'm here to update my safe deposit access." She nodded gently. "Take your time." I placed the envelopes inside and locked the box. Outside, the sun hit my face in that gentle way it sometimes does when you've just done something quietly radical. I wasn't hiding. I was preparing. That afternoon, I called my youngest granddaughter, Lily. She's 15, still soft around the eyes, still kind. She's the only one who asked how I was doing after the funeral. "Grandma," she said, surprised. "You okay?" "I'm better now," I said. "Just wanted to hear your voice." She talked for nearly 20 minutes about school, her art class, the boy she secretly likes, but hasn't told her mom about. I laughed more in that phone call than I had in weeks. Before we hung up, she said, "Grandma, Mom says you're not feeling well, that you might need help." I closed my eyes. "Do I sound like I need help, sweetheart?" There was a pause. "No, you sound like yourself, like the version of you who tells the truth." I smiled. "That's the only version left, baby." We said goodbye. I hung up and sat in silence, holding the phone in my lap. They were building a story. But I was building one too, and mine had receipts. It happened sooner than I thought. A knock at the door. Sharp, rhythmic. Not the kind of knock that comes from neighbors or friends. No, this was the knock of someone on a mission. I opened it to find Karen standing there, arms crossed, lips tight, dressed like she was headed to a courtroom instead of her mother's front porch. "Hi, Mom," she said, not even trying to smile. "We need to talk." I stepped aside without a word. She walked in like she still owned the place. Like every chair, every picture on the wall, every sigh in the air still belonged to her by some inherited right. I watched her look around, her eyes scanning the living room, the hallway, the desk. She was searching for signs of instability, of decline, of justification. We sat across from each other. I let the silence stretch. Finally, she cleared her throat. "We're concerned." I nodded slowly. "You've said that in the email you copied your siblings on." Her mouth twitched. "Michael says you threatened legal action," she said. I said I retained counsel. She blinked. "Why would you do that? We're your children." "No," I said calmly. "You're adults with a financial interest in my removal." That caught her off guard. Her mouth opened, then closed again. "Mom, we just want what's best for you." "What's best for me," I said softly, "is not being manipulated by my own children." She tried a different tactic. Dad changed the will, Mom. It's done. I didn't forge anything. I know, I said. But you helped him do it when he was vulnerable. When I was in the kitchen making soup. When he couldn't think straight, and you handed him a pen. I didn't, I held up my hand. Stop. I found the letter he wrote me. I have the original will. I have documentation. I've spoken to an attorney. This isn't about blaming you. This is about correcting the record. She stared at me for a long time. Then with forced calm, she said, "You're not thinking clearly." There it was, the line I'd been waiting for. I smiled. I've never been clearer. And just so you know, I've documented everything. From the emails, to the medical records, to the statements you made about my condition. It's all in a safe deposit box with my attorney's name on it. Her face changed. Not fear, not guilt. Control slipping. "Mom, please," she said finally. "This doesn't have to get ugly." "It's already ugly," I replied. "You just assumed I wouldn't fight back." I stood. She stayed seated. I towered over her for the first time in years. "You can leave now." She hesitated. Her pride kept her seated half a second too long. Then she rose slowly. "You're throwing away your relationship with your family." I opened the door. "No, Karen. You already did that. I'm just finally acknowledging it." She left. The door clicked shut behind her. I stood in the hallway, hands still trembling slightly, but not with fear. With something else. Power. It wasn't loud or flashy. It was quiet, rooted, grounded. A kind of strength I hadn't felt in decades. Later that night, Mr. Harper called. "They've hired a lawyer," he said. "You should expect a formal challenge." "I'm ready," I told him. He paused, like he wasn't sure he'd heard me right. Then he said, "I believe you are." After I hung up, I went to my bedroom and took out the letter from Thomas again. I read it, not for clarity this time, but for permission. It didn't fix what had been done, but it reminded me that he had trusted me once, loved me once, enough to know that I wouldn't crumble, even if they tried to bury me under the weight of their expectations. I'm not just fighting for the house, or the will. I'm fighting for the right to exist on my own terms. The summons came 2 weeks later. A pale blue envelope hand-delivered by a process server in khakis and a Red Sox cap. He looked vaguely embarrassed as he handed it to me, like he expected me to cry or collapse. I didn't. I thanked him, closed the door, and sat at the kitchen table, the same spot where Thomas used to read the newspaper every Sunday. I opened the envelope, unfolded the papers, and let my eyes move calmly over the words, "Petition for conservatorship." There it was, in black and white. My own children, or at least 2 out of the 3, were asking the court to declare me mentally incompetent. The official reason: recent erratic behavior, resistance to recommended housing transition, impaired decision-making capacity. Impaired. That word hung in the air like a fog. I refused to breathe. I sat very still. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't crumble. Instead, I picked up the phone and called Mr. Harper. "They've filed," I said. "I know," he replied. "They served me this morning." I exhaled. "What now?" He paused. "Now we fight." The hearing was set for a month later. 30 days to prove that I was still in full command of my own mind, my own memory, my own life. 30 days to undo the image my children were painting of me. Confused, irrational, vulnerable. So I got to work. I made an appointment with Dr. Malik, a neurologist I had seen once years ago for dizzy spells that turned out to be nothing. He remembered me. "You're not here for dizziness," he said after shaking my hand. "Are you?" "No," I said. "I'm here to protect myself." He ran every test available. Cognitive memory, problem solving. I aced them all. At the end, he handed me a typed letter on his official stationery. Patient exhibits no signs of cognitive decline or impairment, capable of managing personal financial and legal affairs independently. I tucked that letter into a red folder marked Evidence. Next, I visited the community center, signed up for a poetry group, a painting class, and even a weekly lecture on history and politics. I asked for printed schedules, attendance logs, anything that showed engagement, clarity, consistency. I started a journal. Not for reflection, but for record keeping. Every conversation, every interaction with my children, every errant message, every indirect threat was written down with dates and times. I wasn't going to be caught defenseless again. One day, I received a voicemail from Rachel, the one child who hadn't signed the petition. Mom, I don't know what's happening anymore. I didn't agree to this. I wasn't even told. I'm sorry. I wish I'd said something earlier. I should have stood up for you. I didn't call her back. Not yet. This wasn't the time for emotional reunions. This was the time to protect what was mine and who I was. A week before the hearing, Mr. Harper and I sat in his office going over our materials. They're not prepared for this version of you, he said. I'm not sure I was either, I replied. He smiled. You're not just fighting for a will, Eleanor. You're fighting for your personhood. I nodded. They thought I'd go quietly. He leaned forward. And you didn't. No, I said. Not this time. The courtroom smelled like old wood and fear. I sat at the long, polished table beside Mr. Harper, my palms resting flat, my spine straight, my face calm, or at least I hoped it looked that way. Across from me sat Karen and Michael, flanked by their attorney, a sharp-faced man in a gray suit who didn't look old enough to remember rotary phones. Karen didn't make eye contact. Michael looked at me once, then looked away like I was a stranger he wasn't proud of. The judge entered, an older woman with steel gray hair and a voice that could slice glass. She glanced over the documents, read the petition aloud, and looked directly at me. Mrs. Bennett, she said, do you understand what is being alleged here? I nodded. Yes, Your Honor. And do you contest the petition? I do. Her expression didn't change. Proceed. Their lawyer went first, calm, rehearsed, deliberate. He spoke about recent behavioral instability, resistance to relocation, emotional distress following the loss of her spouse. He spoke of my grief like it was a clinical defect, like it somehow disqualified me from living my life. Then Karen was called to the stand. She told the court I had been forgetting things, missing appointments, becoming paranoid. She said I'd accused them of theft. She said I was isolating myself and rejecting reasonable help. She never mentioned the letter, or the original will, or the months I spent cooking, cleaning, nursing her father in silence while they all stayed away. Then it was my turn. I stood slowly, not because I was weak, but because I wanted each step to count. I took the stand, adjusted the microphone, and looked the judge in the eye. My name is Eleanor Bennett, I began. I am 73 years old. I've raised 3 children. I was married for 51 years to a man I cared for until the day he died. I managed a household, volunteered at the library, and ran a successful home-based business for 2 decades. I am not impaired. I am grieving. And I am angry. But I am not incompetent. I took a deep breath and pulled out the neurologist's letter. This is from Dr. Malik, board-certified neurologist. No signs of cognitive decline. I handed it to the clerk. Here is the original will, written and signed by both me and my husband 20 years ago, before his health began to fail. Another document passed forward. And this, I said, holding it carefully, is a handwritten letter from my husband, acknowledging that he allowed himself to be pressured into rewriting our plans without my knowledge. It was a mistake. He knew it. And now I do too. Karen shifted in her seat. Michael's lawyer leaned over to whisper something. Probably we didn't know about that. I wasn't done. I also have activity records, witness statements, and a complete journal documenting every interaction I've had with my children since Thomas passed away. What they call confusion is actually clarity they didn't expect me to have. The courtroom was quiet. Dead quiet. The judge looked at me, then at the stack of evidence. She didn't say much. Just nodded slowly and said, "Thank you, Mrs. Bennett. Please return to your seat." Later, outside in the hallway, Karen finally looked at me. Her voice was low, tight. "How long have you been planning this?" I didn't blink. "Since the day you decided I didn't matter." She didn't respond. Michael said nothing. They both walked away, not slowly, not quickly. Just silently. And for once, I didn't feel like I needed to follow. The court ruled in my favor. The petition was dismissed. I received the decision by certified mail, though Mr. Harper called to tell me hours before the envelope arrived. His voice was calm, but I could hear something behind it, a quiet satisfaction, maybe even admiration. He told me I handled myself with more dignity than most of his clients, half my age. I thanked him, hung up, and sat on the porch with a glass of cold tea and the letter from the court resting on my lap. I should have felt triumphant. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt hollow. Because what they tried to take from me wasn't just money or a house or legal status. What they tried to take was my role, my voice, my right to exist without being managed, silenced, or rewritten. And though I'd held my ground, I knew deep down something between us had been broken, long before court documents were filed. The next day, Rachel called. "Mom," she said, almost whispering, I heard. Her voice cracked a little. "I should have stopped them. I should have said something when Karen started talking about taking care of you." But I froze. I didn't want to cause a fight. I thought it would blow over. I didn't say anything right away. She continued, "You were never weak. You were never lost." I knew that. I just didn't want to get in the middle. I closed my eyes. "That's the problem, Rachel," I said. I was in the middle. Always. Holding everything together, and when it started falling apart, no one stood with me. She cried then. Not loudly, just a soft, broken sound that made me remember the little girl who used to crawl into bed with me during thunderstorms. "I'm sorry, Mom," she said. "Please don't shut me out." "I'm not shutting anyone out," I said, "but I'm closing the door on being ignored." She promised to visit. I said I'd think about it. That evening, I got an email from Michael. Just one line. "I didn't know how much I hurt you until I saw your face in court." No apology, but it was something. And Karen? She didn't call. She didn't write. But I heard through a neighbor that she and her husband canceled their trip to Italy. She was processing, apparently. I wasn't waiting for her to come around. Some bridges burn with such clean heat, you don't even smell the smoke until it's over. A week passed, then another. I started spending mornings in the garden again, pruning, planting, reclaiming the space that once felt like a chore, and now felt like mine again. I painted the kitchen. I bought new curtains. I moved the framed photo of Thomas from the mantel to the hallway, not out of anger, but out of clarity. That chapter was over. That man was gone. And the version of me that depended on being someone's wife was gone too. One morning, I sat with Lily, my granddaughter, on the porch. She was drawing in her sketchbook, her knees pulled up to her chest. "You okay, Grandma?" she asked. "I am," I said. "Are you?" She nodded, then looked up at me. "Mom says you're different now, that you've changed." I smiled. "No, sweetheart, I just stopped pretending. Some endings don't come with fireworks. They don't come with apologies wrapped in ribbons or perfect reunions where everyone suddenly sees the light. Some endings arrive quietly, like the last note of a long, sad song, fading slowly, but finally. It's been 6 months. I still live in this house. My house. The one Thomas and I built, argued in, laughed and raised 3 children in. I walk through these rooms now with bare feet and a steady breath. There is no tension in the walls. No waiting for the phone to ring. No footsteps coming to take control away from me again. It's quiet, but it's my quiet. Rachel visits sometimes. She brings flowers and stories from Oregon. She sits at the kitchen table and peels apples like she used to when she was 12. We don't talk about the hearing, or Karen, or what might have happened if she had spoken up sooner. Some things are too raw to name, but soft enough to hold. Michael hasn't been back, but he sends me postcards from time to time, places I never knew he wanted to see. In one of them, he wrote, "Hope you're finding peace, Mom." I'm still trying. I haven't heard from Karen, and I've stopped expecting to. Forgiveness, I've learned, is not something you offer to make others feel better. It's something you do quietly alone when you're ready to stop carrying their choices on your shoulders. I forgave her. Not out loud, not to her face. But in the garden one morning, as I trimmed back a rose bush that had overgrown its boundaries, I whispered, "I release you," and the thorns fell away easier than I thought they would. I still talk to Thomas sometimes, in the evenings when the light hits the porch just right. I imagine what he'd say, what he'd think. I don't romanticize him anymore. He made his choices. Some were kind, some were careless, but they were his, and I've finally made mine. I joined a local book club. I painted my front door yellow. I started baking again, not because someone expected it, but because the smell of cinnamon makes me feel like I'm still here. Fully, unapologetically. Last week, Lily gave me a portrait she drew in art class. It was me. Sitting in my rocking chair, eyes closed, sun on my face, hair wild in the breeze. She titled it, "The Woman Who Said No More." I hung it by the front door. Every time I leave the house, I see it. Every time I return, I remember what it took to be this woman. Not bitter, not broken, but bold enough to begin again.